Has everyone had a chance to read or to review the minutes about the last meeting? Yes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Okay, second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Moving along, introduction of newest Ptac member. Anderson, welcome, happy to have you.
Thank you.
Yes. Want to tell us first?
Just a resident, city before resident, live in Osseo, just very happy to be here. I live in Osseo.
Good. All right, I'm glad you're here too. Old business, memorial for Driftwood Arborist summary.
Okay, so here, I believe I sent a copy of the summary from certified arborist, Michael Murphy. Pretty much going through his assessment of the palmetto tree on Boundary and Charles Street. As you know, we've been working, along with Gibson Down and Fleetwood. We're trying to figure out the best way to memorialize, Driftwood. As you can tell in this summary, Michael Murphy believes that the palmetto tree would be very difficult to survive. However, I'd like to bring up Nate and myself were doing a walkthrough of Southside Park yesterday, and one of the newly planted palmetto trees is declined to the point where it's dead. So I know that Gibbs said that Palmsman Parkway said that he could transplant it for free and that it would survive. If that was something we would want to do moving forward, that could be a good location to try. There is water access for the tree, not just irrigation, but there's probably 20 feet away that we could run and get adequate water to help it survive. If we wanted to, it's a good way of kind of getting it away from the main highway and into a park where it's feasible for control, especially it being around playground. There's not many people flying through and knocking the palm tree out.
What kind of money is he talking about?
So he said he would do it for free, is what Gibbs and Fleet said he would do. That's something we would still have to confirm, that he would move it for free, because I don't believe that we have the equipment to do that. This is very valuable. Almost 40-foot palm tree.
I think after the discussion in our last meeting, I think it was the consensus of everybody who was present that moving it was not worth the investment. I mean, the city of Beaufort has to pay for it.
So, like Adam said, we went out to Southside and we were doing an inspection earlier this week. We did see that one of the palm trees out there is declining. We were talking about this before, and it was always kind of, we hated to have to see the tree go, right? Like, cause that was kind of the whole purpose of the whole art, was that it was on the tree and all of that. I know one of the big concerns was that it is right near the road. It is right where a car can hit it. I mean, we've had light poles there that have been taken out multiple times that are, within 10-15 feet from that tree. We were also worried about if we transplant it, that there would be no suitable, irrigation, no suitable way for us to maintain it. And you're just kind of putting it right back into another place that doesn't fit with trying to memorialize it. So when we were out there, this spot kind of fit the needs, right? It has irrigation. It's going to have constant public works access. We're at Southside 2 to 3 times a week. We are moving it away from a main thoroughfare. We're putting it actually on the backside of a parking space on the backside of a sidewalk. So there's probably a 20-foot buffer from anywhere anyone's going to be driving. And we thought, if all fails, you're still going to be able to do the same thing that you have planned to do with the memorializing it and cutting that section out and all of that. But we just felt that it would be an opportunity that we could try to keep the tree alive and try to at least give it the attention it needs to try to give it every effort to survive. And so I talked to the city manager. He was very, welcoming if we wanted to try that. And it's up to you guys ultimately if that's something you want to do. I'm sure there's gonna be some cost associated with it, whether we gotta add some extra drip line or whatever it is to try to do it, but I'm willing to absorb, up to a reasonable amount, right? Like I can't pay 20 grand to move a palm tree, but if it's 500, 600, 700 bucks to try to do what we can to make the tree survive, I'm willing to do that just so that we can continue. Plus, you should be able to memorialize it out there. And so you can put some kind of placard or you can do whatever you want on the sidewalk, because it's all cities. It's not the states. So you have more leeway with what you can do out there than if you were to try to keep it on a state or a road. So we were just thinking, I know this kind of comes late in the game, but like I said, we just kind of noticed this earlier this week that this opportunity even had a chance of trying to do it. So we wanted to offer it, and it's still up to you guys if you want to memorialize it another way. We're just here to support, and so it's up to you guys.
I'm a proponent of free. Free speaks to me. And if it can be moved for free, I think it's, the stars all aligned for this kind of. But if it's not free, then maybe we're back to $3,000 to move the tree.
Maybe the odds went up to the rise. I think before Mike Murphy looked at it, I thought you had said it had, I can't remember the percentage, 10-15% chance of survival.
It's usually, so this time of year,
You had said something like
it's hot. If it was anywhere else where we would have kind of be able to get there, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock to water with Buffalo, it would dry up. But since it's somewhere where there's irrigation present, timings would come on, in the late evenings or early mornings so that it would get the adequate water that it needs to go into the system. And it's also right there in a park that it's a little bit safer than probably the other roadways that we were thinking, pocket parks that are kind of right off the main street bears. And I think it could have a good chance to survive just because of the location. But again, it all comes to when it's removed, how much of the root ball is transplanting, the transporting it itself, getting it to the park, installing it correctly. All adds to the percentage. We do everything the right way. I think that we give it a good shot. So it's like Nate's saying, either way, if it doesn't survive, we're still going to cut it out proportionally anyway. So it's still a good opportunity with the perfect location now with the palm tree having declined that far that we can try to make this.
So this is really based on the hope that Isaiah is still in agreement, moving this forward, correct? Because if he has changed his mind, then.
We would reach out to, I'm sorry, what was your name?
Here's down.
Yeah, with this, and we would make sure, hey, is this something that you think you want to try to go down the road of? And then we would all kind of join together and get back with Isaiah and just make sure, hey, we want to make sure we heard you right. When you said that you would move it for free, and then let's double check and make sure that that's still an option. And then if it is, then we have an opportunity to save the tree and possibly put it in a place where it's going to see a lot of foot traffic, and it's, Southside, the park and the trail is being used every day. There's always people on it. And I think it would be a great opportunity not only to, one, help us, because we're not gonna have to go buy it, because we're gonna have to buy a palm tree anyway, if that one is basically there's no saving it, which we're pretty sure, we believe it's pretty much gone, but it saves us from having to buy a tree, but it also puts something in that circle where we just built that's informative and can be very interesting for kids and adults as well. So I just thought it would be a good opportunity to bring a little bit of light, something different that's not out there, that's a little more historical, to a brand new park. It's kind of a neat opportunity to have something kind of old and new.
And it's the same palm tree too.
You know why it died? The one that was there, I'm gonna say that it was probably because it wasn't planted.
I thought you just.
Because there's 32 others that are perfectly fine. Yeah.
Well, it's the other died off.
So if he's moving this, my only concern would be, does he know? Has he had experience with pulling out a root ball, a palm that size from a streetscape? And what if he damages stuff, what happens then?
I would say, what were the palm trees that he?
Yeah, they were probably about 50 foot.
They're half the size. He works with all different types, he does all different types of jobs. I know he has the experience. But again, I think it comes down to. Is it still free? The option is still free. Because I think the pricing that we got from when we looked at the, what's that, Evergreen Cemetery, I think it was 1,500 to 1,800 per palm tree. 800 trees.
Wow. It's a lot of money. But everything.
That's probably more than that's
There was also heightened risk because there was graves right next to the palm trees. So that increased the price as well, so.
So there's no lines or anything that are going under there that he could possibly damage
I don't think
when he
There
takes it out?
There is, but he did trees for us whenever we did Arbor Day. I wanna say like 6 years ago, I think Barb, you were part of that, and we planted, I think there were like 12, 15
that's where.
foot palms on Craven, and we had water, fiber, and power. Power was overhead, but we had all of that in the ground and overhead, and he maneuvered all around all of that. And he did a lot of hand digging and stuff like that, so.
I have a couple quick questions. What is the current age of the palm tree?
35 foot, so I would say it's probably anywhere between 10 and 15 years.
And what's the lifespan of a palm tree for the palmettos?
It's like 10, 15 years.
Things that are 15 years old.
No, it's longer.
It's got-
Yeah,
it's-
I think
it's
that's
bad.
probably been out there since like at least 80s, 90s.
It's gotta be older because he's been dead for a long time. I don't know how long, but 50 years. I mean, it's been dead for. I don't know.
Thought it was 79 or late 70s.
In the right conditions, I think a palm can survive for a very, very long time. 25 plus years, I'd say, in the right condition.
And
Just perfect conditions.
what is the cost of a new, for a new palm tree? If we didn't transplant it?
In ballparks anywhere from like $700 to $1,000. Depending on the size.
What's the cost of removal for the current dying one?
We would probably do it in the house because it's at our park, so we're going in the house, and just be labor and then plus whatever machines. So
What's the best time of year to transplant a palm tree?
I would have done it in the late fall, winter kind of, just because when you plant in late fall, early winter, the roots get established and then the spring growth is more, if you can plant in the summer, it's just that the growth won't be as. I mean, that's in the fall, winter.
Thank you.
So one thing, depending on the type of tree, palm trees can live up to 100 years, no problem, but some can even live longer than that. So, there's, I believe, trees that live upwards of, palm trees that live upwards of 150, 200 years.
Because the palm trees actually more closely related to weed than it is an actual tree.
Interesting. Okay. So do we need a motion? Move forward with your plan?
It's what you guys decided to do.
We don't want to do.
I think-
The option is to try to move the tree into Southside Park. Or. Or take the totem section out of the tree and. Put something on it to preserve it and mount it somewhere. Somewhere in the park.
Is there a drop dead date that we have to do the tree by?
No, it's just obviously, I think the main concern is each passing day that goes by, you roll the dice of the perfect,
Perfect storm
the
of
perfect storm of a
somebody
vehicle
hitting it with a
striking,
car.
and then the
Yeah.
art's gone forever. So even though there's not a deadline of moving forward in the process, it'd be ideal.
So we can always, if you would like, just kind of table it until we can get more information whether Isaiah would move it for free or if there is gonna be any costs associated. And then maybe what I can do is Adam or myself can reach out to you. Or we can just say, hey, look, we've retouched base with them and just kind of let everyone know this is still what's on the table. And then, if it looks like it's gonna be too much, then we'll just go back to the original plan. And if not, then maybe, by the next meeting, we can say, hey, everything that we're talking about is in place. Unfortunately, like I said, this came about this week, so we really haven't had time to touch base with anybody. And I kind of apologize for putting a wrinkle in everything, but, we are passionate about trees and we want to be Tree City USA and we want to continue to try to help thrive. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to maybe, like I said, bring some old into the new of South Sides.
Have you explored any costs associated with the other option? Yep.
You mean with cutting?
Cutting it to preserve it.
I think obviously, because, our direction was we were going to see if we could partner with USC Games and maybe one of the art students would want to assist with that and then kind of work in conjunction. Make that happen, but I think it'd be relatively cheap side versus the other option. If we had to pay everything else, obviously.
Okay. Well, some money would have to be spent to preserve it. Which I,
Ton neighborhood, like Nate said, we're already at the market.
what's that?
It's not too popular anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, then. Basically, we'll go ahead and table this until our next meeting, at which point we'll have more information as to whether or not. Isaiah will do it for free, and I think that's important. Same in the saving of the funds, so.
So we can probably reach out and I think that we can probably have that answered by the end of next week, what that's gonna be. I know Isaiah travels to Florida and back to his palm trees and some other stuff. So as long as we kind of catch him when he's not and going down for business or doing whatever, I think if we reach out, it should be a fairly simple answer for him to tell us yes or no, or if he would do it, what it's gonna be and all of that. So I think we should be able to have that answer by the end of next week. Talking about it, I think it would be good for us to maybe also look into preserving and what it would take for that, and we can, two things, we can talk to Michael Murphy and see what like recommendations he has, or if he knows anybody that's ever done it before. I can honestly say, besides like, history museums that have stuff that's been like preserved on its own. And you go and look at it, I don't know what the steps are to do that. But I think it's wise to look into that as well and see, what all that would take as well.
Could you send a picture of the site at Southside, like, I mean, a 35-year-old tree is gonna be taller than, assuming the ones that you have there. I mean, is it gonna look appropriate in that space?
It's gonna be, it's gonna
Is
be,
it centered, is it gonna, like, over?
It'll stand out,
Yeah,
which is good because it draws attention to it, especially if you're trying to memorialize.
Is it close to the playground?
It's closer to the pavilion.
Oh,
So if you came into the parking lot around the first loop, it'd be straight dead ahead on the right side.
yeah, it would be. So if the playground's here and the pavilion's here, it's actually on this side of the park where the phase two, I believe, is the activity field would be. It's over here, so it's an open field behind it.
Essentially, you would wait till fall to move, correct?
I do,
You would wanna give it the best chance to
Yeah.
survive.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
How many, do we know how many accidents have occurred at that particular, where the tree is currently?
I've been with the city for 8 years and I can tell you there's probably that I've responded to, I can't give you a number of like fire. Or police incidents, but for light pole knockdowns, pedestrian knockdowns and all of that. I would say we've probably had anywhere between 5 and 10 in the. Probably about once a year is, I would say on average.
So,
Now granted, that's that intersection, so that's that whole intersection I'm encompassing, it's not just that one side over there. But I know that we just put up a whole brand new row of lights there, which I believe were 3 lights that we just put up from the USCB dorms to Charles intersection. We put 3 brand new halogen lights up to replace the 3 old style goosenecks that were hit and taken down. And those all happened within the 8 years that I've been here.
That's all in that row.
all right. Yes,
Yeah, but it sounds like looks like he died maybe in the 70s, so it's like, has survived.
79.
50
79.
plus years without it getting hurt. I know.
I could have seen him, because I thought, if I remember right, I thought it was 79. I had,
It's a palmetto.
and then I had
tree,
4
correct?
years to pass Mr. Griffwood. Yeah, Pigeon Point, there's somebody who lives close there, I think they said it used to be a crosswalk
Right in front
from
of the-
Pigeon Point across boundary,
One blood.
I was here then.
and it's no longer there.
Sidewalk.
Yeah.
Crosswalk. Where the,
I came in 70, yeah.
right where the pink house is,
There may have been,
close to, West Street.
I know that there's been a push for safety reasons to remove crosswalks that aren't at intersections. Because it's like 10 times safer to cross at an intersection than it is to try to cross just at a crosswalk.
So cursory glance, the palmetto tree lives about 100, possibly up to 200 years. So we're kind of about the halfway point of this tree.
If it survives being moved, I mean, that's a big question there. But, once again, my feeling is that if there's no cost, he's gonna do for free, then
Move for free instead of-
Yeah,
or
and
irrigation system.
Well, let's do, it would, if we have to go the route where the tree doesn't survive, and we don't preserve it, it'd be a safer procedure to do so. It would take the traffic control out of it, it'd be coming in a controlled environment. We're trying to schedule everything perfectly, we could just auction off a section of the playground park to make sure that the buildings are safe for work. Yeah. Usually the work out of it. There's pluses. Obviously, one is an immediate cutting, you cut it down, you move forward with it, it's done. The other one is the A35 palm tree to transplant these small pocket median. Parkings.
that's a big deal to me.
The only other concern that I could possibly think of is that either prior or during hurricanes, storm come through, and their root balls will not be established. So I wanted, so you end up losing it if you go prior to that.
I think. Speaking of it, just because we can't always discuss it every year, but it could be a good option for carpet game.
That'd be the first part of December.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I wouldn't promote something for Arbor Day that may not
Yeah.
survive. I think it could still be a great story piece, and you know, if 6 months after it's transplanted, it's looking like it's doing great and it's doing good, then I think, yeah, you should probably get some possible news footage or some, you know, local, you know, stories on it, especially to get it out there for people to come and see it. The second part of, you know, hurricane season and all of that, I mean, we've, between January and now, Public Works itself has cleaned up, you know, dozens of trees that have fell, even not in hurricane season. So I think, one, yes, we should watch and make sure the weather is appropriate for it to be transplanted and planted out there. We need to make sure that it's properly supported. And I think Isaiah would be the one to know how to do that as well. And then constantly keeping a visual eye on it to make sure that it's staying where it needs to be and that it's not shifting or moving and that, you know, it looks like it's taking. And we want to make sure that we're keeping our eyes on it too, because obviously we don't want it to, I guess, degrade to where we can't save something. So we're going to have a watchful eye on it to make sure that, hey, it's looking like it's going to make it or it's not. And then once we see it's not, then it's like, okay, we're going to implement phase 2, which is we're going to cut the section out and make sure that we can preserve this. So,
You guys said that you're out there about 2-3 times a week. It's outside, so it'd be maybe.
Want that increase? Well, before you add things to it, which you have to be out there a little bit more than 2 to 3 times, probably.
It depends on how the planning is. Obviously, I think something.
yeah. So when we say that we'll be out there 2 to 3 times a week, so 2 days to 3 days is doing like full maintenance. Now, there's still going to be times people are out there. We have sheds out there that they go out every Monday. They empty the trash cans along all of our parks, our trails, and all of that. Southside gets more attention because it has bathrooms and other stuff. But there is going to be pretty much, it's kind of like Waterfront Park. There's going to be someone there every day. Now, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour, or we're going out there to do a playground inspection, or we're, you know, checking a broken handle at the bathroom. I say 2 to 3 times a day, that a week is going to be like 3 or 4 people out there doing like full maintenance. There's going to be probably someone out there almost every single day.
And good thing too,
alright. We'll move on. Responsibility changes update.
Okay, so as you know, last meeting, you approved the amendments to the responsibility changes. We talked to Nate, and we would just need kind of like the final draft of all those changes. That it, to council, so if, you know them to me, right? I'll try to get you in. Council meetings, council, as long as we're still in.
Do you know when that would be?
If everything goes smooth, it would be.
They probably make the July 8th.
Yeah,
And it would go to work session first. You would just present the changes in work session, and then that lets council know what's going on, what changes you want to make, and then it gives them time to think about it. And then you would go in front of council at a council meeting the next month And then that's when it would be voted on for the changes to take place. So I would say that probably the August meeting would be the council work session that we could get you to. And then if everything goes well there's no questions or changes or anything like that. Then you should be able to go to the actual council meeting, which would be on September, so September would be. And so all of our meetings are the second Tuesday of the month. And I wish that I was smart enough to tell you that off the top of my head, but I'm not. I'm lucky to remember July. I think July 8th is a Tuesday, and that's just because the first Tuesday first.
As long as it's in August, I'm still good. It's gone.
Second Tuesday in August is the 12th.
That's the work sex, work
The work
session.
session.
August would be work session, September 8th, if everything goes smoothly, no changes or.
And so once you send me the updated changes and everything, I'll sit down with the city manager, we'll discuss it, and then he'll tell me, okay, let's put it on the agenda. And then once it's put on the agenda, myself and Miss Tracy will make sure that you guys are constantly, like, hey, still good for this date or something for this date. And then, yeah, and then, and just kind of, if council has questions or wanna tell them why and whatever, and then from there, it gives them something to kind of chew on, and then in the September one, they would vote on it and either allow to make the change. Or not.
Want to discuss anything different? I already had. Have you had a chance to look at responsibility changes? But other than that, I don't have anything different than what we already have.
I'm fine with it. You, Jeff? Changes. Right.
Doesn't say what we can do, it just says what we do.
You might share your mind.
New business. One of the things that was brought to my attention today was bringing some a sapling. And I just found out about this. This is the Liberty tree sapling. I'm not sure what kind of tree it is.
I
But
assume it's the sort of top like
it's a little poplar.
because a liberty tree is either an elm or a.
Well, I haven't had a chance to really review this either, but if you guys read this, it refers to it being presented as a historic, the Beaver 250 community that committee on Tuesday, July 2nd at 11:30. And it's basically going to be up to us to determine where it's going to be planted. So that's.
Do we have a definitive on whether it is a tulip poplar or an elm tree?
I was leaning towards tulip poplar because in this one, to the mayor, she states that she's from Tennessee and that her state tree is the tulip poplar. So I was kind of leaning towards that whenever, but I've read it and I have no idea which one it is, so.
My only concern with an elm would be if it was susceptible to Dutch elms.
Something, do elms grow a lot here? I can't.
Plenty of
think
ones
of-
out there, you know,
Tell me about the tree
right.
trees.
The elms that are used in a lot of streetscapes and some of the new developments. The apartment building.
Many people talking about.
Integra at Wright's Point, planted. That's all the streetscape and they're doing really well, right?
Anyway, so we're gonna have to determine where we should plant a special tree. Sadly, I direct Senate, last known standing trees at one stood at Scott, asked the God for something. American Revolution.
There's a tulip poplar, we should like coordinate with the garden club, and that's a great tree for pollinators and bees and stuff.
I think that the Beaufort Garden Club wants to be involved with this. I also saw a letter that they wrote.
So I will just say that I didn't know much about a tulip poplar until about 20 minutes before this meeting. But I did Google it, and I was very shocked to see how big this tree is. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think it said 70 to 100 feet tall. And what was it? 40 to 60 feet wide or something like that.
Yeah, I'm just down here with the same, so, yeah.
It was very surprising when I saw this. It may say sapling in this, but don't let that fool you because it said 2 to 3 foot growth per year.
Oh, that's the growth rate.
And depending too on the urban setting, we plant.
So wherever it goes, it's gonna need a lot of room.
Where you got one.
Southside Park. I mean, that's a given, right?
Trying to make it better.
That's
Could
what,
be the worst thing, it stands out, you know.
I mean, I was just thinking about the other parks, but I don't think there's. The other parks.
Any points, not.
They already have trees.
I was gonna say the other pocket parks are too small for a tree.
So the reason the Whitehall could be an option, but the city does not maintain the trees at Whitehall.
The county does,
It's the open land trust maintains the trees. The city maintains the grounds, the pavilion, the driveway, like we take care of everything. And then it's owned by Beaufort County, so it's kind of a trifecta of stuff, so. The only thing, the Friends of Whitehall just planted a large oak tree out there, so, I don't know, I don't think that they would be opposed to it. But if this is to the city, I think that maybe it should possibly go in a city. Maintained home that we can back in with that, and
I think
if
so
something
too.
happens to it later in life, we wanna be able to make the decision, not have someone.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all. Alrighty. Which brings me to ask about the 2 Japanese maples
Yes.
that we talked about
Yes.
earlier. What we're talking about is planting in honor of the 2 people that have been really involved in leadership. Beaufort
Mhm.
and the park over Coast Point. Right, in their honor. Where exactly? Are we just waiting once again until fall?
I believe we would have to write up the recommendation, right?
That's how I read the budget statement.
So we just have.
It was just, last time I was under the understanding that we were just waiting for the right time to plant.
Who pays for that? Who pays for the trees?
I'll have to give with Councilman Scaletti and see, if, I believe it's a gift from the students to the teacher. So, yeah, I think we're gonna plan them and do all of that, but I believe the students are the ones donating the trees.
It's a maple tree, correct?
Yeah.
Japanese maple. Have we determined if it's do we know if it's a tree that'll survive down here? the Japanese maple tree that.
They will, I have something for you. I know certain varieties will not survive because it's too hot and humid, but
Crispy one.
like, I have some that have been doing, quite well. So,
And that one that's right off the back.
it's good. Yeah, it's good. All right. Yeah, anything else? Yes.
Is there any public comment?
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? It's adjourned.
Thank you.